We are live and ready to start.
All right, so I just wanted to first off start by welcoming everyone and thanking you for attending our webinar today. We are going to be discussing some very interesting topics for the times. I think it's a really interesting time right now for immigration with COVID and various immigration bans going on. And I think there's really still a lot of opportunity out there for people too as well, who are interested in residency or green cards in the US as an investor. So, one of the things that I get asked on a pretty regular basis is, what countries qualify for investment immigration? And I think a lot of people are pretty surprised by the answer. So we're going to start a poll here too as well for everyone to kind of give us some feedback on which countries, are going to be of most interest to you. So we'll put that poll up for everyone. And then we can kind of better discuss a little bit sort of what some of those things are that maybe you'd like to learn a little bit more information on as well. And then if you have any questions throughout the entire presentation, feel free to put them in the chat box. And I will try to pose as many of those to Christian as I can. And we'll see if we can stump them today. Next, Christian is going to share with us how you can get started on that residency journey to the United States and how we can kind of help to navigate that process too as well with all the different various things that are going on.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone this morning. I am live from Houston, still working from home. Our offices at Jackson Walker are opening up over the next several weeks. But in the meantime, I continue to work from home given the COVID-19 situation, which is a good segue into today's topic. In discussing the current times, we're looking at various reasons why foreign nationals may be experiencing difficulties with being able to immigrate or move to the United States. Whether those difficulties are due to COVID-19, the global pandemic that we're all experiencing, or whether those difficulties are due to immigration bans or specific country-specific bans, we thought it would be helpful to discuss some of those issues in more specificity to help you all understand that there are still ways to come to the United States under various immigration visa options. So let's get started. I'll load these slides so we have some talking points. Let me move back a bit. I thought I would first give a little bit of background about myself and my firm. We could go just a quick primer on a non-immigrant visa versus an immigration process, key in on EB-5 and E-2 investor options as viable options, even under today's immigration and COVID-19 climate, and then go on to talk about these immigration bans, these temporary suspensions, and how U.S. consulates are operating under COVID-19. So, as I previously mentioned, my name is Christian Triantaphyllis. I am a partner at Jackson Walker, where I run the investment immigration team. Jackson Walker has been around for over 100 years. We've got over 400 attorneys across 7 offices in the United States. We are a full-service law firm. We handle all types of law, have all types of clients, Fortune 500 clients, small clients, medium-sized clients. But our immigration team, we're busy with all types of immigration work as well, whether it be investment immigration processes, employment-based or family-based. Our handful of attorneys and paralegals are working on a variety of immigration issues. I've been working in the EB-5 space and investor visa space for quite some time, focusing on these types of visas since 2011. Over the years, I've been a frequent speaker and writer on these topics and work on these types of issues on a daily basis. All right, so I think to have a real kind of understanding of the discussion today, we want to take a brief minute just to understand what types of options are out there for you to pursue when looking to move to the United States. I think it's important to first put these in two different categories, meaning the non-immigrant visa types. These are the short-term specific purpose visas to come to the U.S. As compared to the immigrant processes. These are those processes that wind up as becoming a lawful permanent resident. And as you can see, they've all got a various letter and or number associated with the different types of visas or immigration processes. So in the blue, on the blue side of this chart, we've got the non-immigrant visas. And those are your visitor visas, your student visas, your training visas, and a bunch of your work authorization visas. One of those is the E-2 visa, which is focused on investment and ownership of a business in the United States. And I'll get into more details of what an E-2 visa entails. But I just wanted to demonstrate that is on your non-immigrant visa side. On your immigrant process side, to wind up as a lawful permanent resident or green card holder in the United States, we have a variety of options, and I've highlighted the EB-5 investment option as one that we'll be speaking about today. Not only is that something that I focus on in great detail in my professional career, but it also remains one of the viable options under today's immigration climate. So let's first dive into on how one can qualify under the E-2 investment option. So under this option, we're basically having to focus on the investor's passport and whether that passport has a treaty with the United States to qualify for an E-2. In addition, we're looking at an investment known as a substantial investment into a U.S. company. Now that U.S. company needs to be at least 50% owned or more by the same nationality as that investor who has the passport that qualifies for the E-2. So oftentimes this just means, in the most simplest terms, that a foreign national who has the citizenship of an E-2 treaty will come in and invest in a U.S. business. Perhaps they'll own 100% of that U.S. business, and now the E-2 qualifies. The U.S. business is owned by that nationality, and that investor has that qualifying nationality.
So what are some of the qualifying nationalities that you can have that you most commonly see? And then what are some of the nationalities that are not on the list that frequently people are interested in E-2 from?
Sure. So I'm oftentimes working with Mexican nationals, Canadian nationals, Taiwanese individuals, individuals from some South Korea. I've got a handful of Pakistani clients doing E-2s, and it really just it's worldwide in terms of the types of E-2s that I tend to work on. It's the individuals who do not qualify that are the ones we have to kind of think of sort of in a more advanced way to figure out how we can get them into the country as an E-2 visa holder. And those are individuals from Brazil, China, India, to name a few, who we have to really think of creative ways to bring them over to the U.S. And what are those creative ways? That's to acquire a passport that does qualify as an E-2 treaty, that does have an E-2 treaty with the U.S., so the individual can qualify for an E-2 visa. Oftentimes people look to Grenada, Turkey, Montenegro as options to qualify to become an E-2 visa holder. And when moving forward with a client under that scenario, they oftentimes ask, well, what do I do first? Do I have to go get the passport to apply for the E-2? Should I go ahead and make my investment in the U.S. business? When do I do that? Do I need to wait for that second passport? My response to them is you should do those two processes in a simultaneous manner. Do them at the same time. You won't actually apply for the E-2 visa until you have that second passport that qualifies, that has the E-2 treaty. But one of the elements of the E-2 to make it a stronger E-2 case is to demonstrate that you have a business that is already up and running. So you can go to the U.S. consulate with an E-2 visa application that says all of this is about to happen based off of my substantial investment and ownership in the business. But even better if you can show, look, for the last 3 months, I've got employees in operations. We're an operating business, and I'm going to come in and run that operating business. So what I mean by doing these two processes at the same time, you can go ahead and start your investment and get everything going on the business side in the U.S. to prepare for the E-2, and at the same time start that acquisition of the second passport. So when you have that second qualifying passport, you then can go to the U.S. consulate and already have some history to show for your E-2 business, if that makes sense.
Nope, I think that's great. And I think that's really right too, as well. We see a lot of clients that, as they're moving through the process, the things that you can do to make sure that your process goes faster and more smoothly would be to be prepared as it is in just about anything in life.
Absolutely. And there are some other elements to this. We want to make sure that business is providing an income or compensation that allows you to demonstrate it's not a marginal investment. It needs to more than enough income to provide a minimal living for the investor and the family. There are different ways to look at that, but typically we want to demonstrate some profit and compensation, being able to go down to the investor. The investor and clients often ask me who can come to the United States along with the investor, and we know that the investor's spouse and children under the age of 21 can get E-2 dependent visas to accompany the investor to the U.S. When we can get it, there's more specifics that we could get into, but these are the basics of qualifying for the E-2. And I think you're more than welcome to contact either of us to look into this further. In addition, I wanted to touch on a few of the EB-5 green card basics. This program was set up in 1990 and has since gone through some revisions or updates as recently as last year. We're now looking at a $1.8 million investment level unless the business that you're investing in is located in a targeted employment area. Targeted employment area is considered to be a rural area or an area of high unemployment. Once, based on making that, let's say, $900,000 investment, you're going to show that 10 new jobs will be created as a result of the investment. We have to show that the investment comes from a lawful source. And who can immigrate based off of an EB-5 investment? Well, again, the spouse and unmarried children under the age of 21 can accompany the EB-5 investor to become green card holders based off of the EB-5 immigration process. There are some nuances and some specifics there on age-out issues and backlogged countries in terms of children accompanying the investor. But those are the basic elements of who can come to the U.S. and how it works. Jennifer, go ahead.
Too, in that category as well, is when we're looking at the children of the EB-5 investor. The children of the EB-5 investor, once they're a conditional permanent resident of the United States, they get to keep that conditional permanent residence forever. Whereas with the E-2 investor, you're looking at once that child goes over the age of 21, they're no longer allowed to accompany their parents. So, that's one of the biggest differences between E-2 and EB-5.
Great point. And that not only is it one of the biggest differences, it also sort of highlights how both of these two programs can work together. I'll get into some timelines in a later slide, but just to touch on that further, individuals who come to me and have older children who are 18, 19 years old and want to move to the U.S. fairly quickly, but also want a long-term plan for their family members, will wind up considering and moving forward oftentimes with the E-2 option to come here to the U.S. In a faster manner, but at the same time apply for an EB-5 green card so that the dependent children can take control of their own immigration destiny and wind up as conditional lawful permanent residents, go on to remove conditions, and if they choose to do so, apply for citizenship. Now, for both the E-2 and the EB-5 process, we are going to want to understand where the investment funds come from. I would say that the level of scrutiny is higher on the EB-5 side, and in terms of having to document that lawful source of the $900,000 investment. I have worked with a number of different foreign nationals over the years. I've seen all kinds of different scenarios in terms of where investors wind up with their investment funds. These are some of the more common scenarios, whether it's accumulation of salary or income of some kind, sale of real estate, loans secured by a property, shareholders' loans are fairly common, dividends based on ownership in businesses, and gifts. We don't want to forget about gifts. I'm constantly working on gift cases where perhaps a 23-year-old child is living in the U.S., a child of the family who's made the money. The child may be still studying in the U.S. and is now considered an adult under U.S. immigration laws and wound up as a gift to make their E-2 or EB-5 investment. We do have to look to the person making the donation in terms of doing the source of funds analysis. But this slide just goes to show that U.S. immigration, Department of State, they all want to see where these investment funds come from. So earlier we had a quick sample of what an E-2 investment structure looks like. I also wanted to touch on what an EB-5 structure can look like. This is just an example. Over the years, I've seen a number of different types of structures, whether it's just one individual investing in one business to qualify for EB-5, or it's 100 individuals investing in a fund, which then is going to fund a variety of different developments to create jobs. But here, this is a fairly simple diagram in terms of EB-5 investors making their $900,000 or $1.8 million investment into what's called the NCE, New Commercial Enterprise. This is just the immigration term for the EB-5 investment company. When associated with a regional center, we usually have the manager of that fund being related to the regional center, or perhaps there would just be an affiliation agreement with the regional center. Why do we have this? The regional center allows for the project to get credit for indirect job creation. Remember, I touched on that 10 jobs per investor requirement. Without the regional center affiliation, you only get credit for direct jobs, W-2 full-time employees. With that regional center affiliation or management of the fund, you're getting credit for direct, indirect, induced jobs, much higher job creation count, which creates better assurance for the EB-5 investors' immigration process. Now, the other aspects of this diagram show that there's other forms of financing that can oftentimes come into a project. The good news is that all the financing that goes into the project, including the EB-5 funds, goes towards that overall job creation for the EB-5 investor.
So that box that's right up there in the upper right-hand corner, you've got your manager regional center, and that's what First Pathway Partners, our company, provides in the process. So we assist in, taking a look at projects, taking a look at developers, doing due diligence on these projects. We've participated in over $1 billion worth of development here in the United States for immigrant investment. And so, we're very well positioned to assist you in that process, both from the immigration standpoint, as well as from the capital preservation standpoint as well, too. So, we've worked on big projects with, up to, over 200 investors, all the way down to, smaller projects with just a few investors too as well. And so we're happy to help you with that process, and we're happy to identify projects that may fit your best needs.
Yeah, so that also touches on sort of the variety of structures that you guys have worked on. And that also shows that the EB-5 program can be flexible so long as you're working with the right group who knows how to work under the compliance requirements of EB-5. As an immigration attorney specializing in EB-5, I'm oftentimes asked by potential clients who have been discussing EB-5 or E-2 options with other advisors, and I have to slow them down on some of the structures they're coming up with because it doesn't quite work for the EB-5 program. But that's not to say that we can't get creative or be flexible and try and make it work for your needs. All right, so I think this slide is really helpful in terms of what kind of timing are we talking about. Now, I want to reiterate, I want to emphasize these are just examples of timelines. These are not set in stone. This is just what I've been seeing in real time in my practice. But as Jennifer knows, these timelines can vary depending how USCIS is operating, how the Department of State is operating, and so forth. In general, the top timeline, the E-2 timeline, is much shorter than the EB-5 timeline. Here we're talking about preparing a visa application through the U.S. Embassy or U.S. Consulate in your home country if you are abroad. There is the possibility, instead, of doing what's called a change of status if you happen to be in the United States in another visa type. Remember, we go back to that visa chart. There's all types of visas in order to change to E-2 status. However, the more common scenario is applying for that E-2 visa at the U.S. Embassy. It generally takes, let's say 30 to 60 days to prepare the application, depending on how quickly parties are working and the investment is made, working together. Now, once the application is submitted, depending on the consulate where the application is submitted, that can take another 60 to 90 days to get the visa appointment, to get that interview, to discuss the E-2 visa application, and for the consular officer to make a decision on that E-2 visa application. Again, depending on the consulate, it may be issued same day, or your E-2 visa may be issued a few days to a week later, sometimes 2 weeks later or so. But all in all, it's a fairly efficient, quick process and compared to other immigration processes. Upon receiving that E-2 visa, you and if your dependents are coming with you and went to the consular interview with you, can enter the U.S. with those E-2 visas in hand within a matter of days after attending that E-2 visa interview. Now, the EB-5 timeline, as I mentioned, is longer. We can prepare the I-526 petition in a matter of anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. We've got to document your source of funds. We prepare that petition, file it with USCIS. The USCIS is a special office in Washington, D.C. for EB-5 cases. I've been seeing over the last, let's say, 2 years, approvals in anywhere from 12 to 24 months. Rarely shorter. Fairly commonly, it will happen longer than 24 months, depending. That's kind of a case-to-case basis. But let's say we get the approval in 20 months. Then, if you're outside of the United States, we'll be arranging for you to pick up your immigrant visa at the U.S. consulate abroad. That will entail an interview, as I described before, for the E-2 process. And then upon getting the EB-5 immigrant visa, you can enter the United States as a conditional green card holder. And within the 24-month period of the expiration of that green card, you'll be filing the I-829 process to convert it, to remove conditions, have your, let's say, non-conditional green card, and can go on to apply for citizenship. Now, one of the key elements of this chart shows you if you enter the U.S. as an E-2 visa holder while your EB-5 case is pending with USCIS, or if you enter as an E-2 visa holder and then apply for your EB-5 case. If the EB-5, if that I-526 petition is approved while you're in the U.S. as, for example, under E-2 status, instead of going to the U.S. consulate abroad to come back as a green card holder, you can instead file to adjust status right here in the United States. It will take some time for that green card to be issued, for it to be produced. But in the interim, you would get an international travel document and work authorization which individuals really like. It creates the freedom that they can work and live and travel wherever they'd like to in the U.S. while waiting for the green card. And again, once the green card is issued, it will be that conditional green card, and you go on to remove conditions and complete the EB-5 process. So that's kind of a lot of information there, but I hope that was clear enough. I'm happy to touch on any follow-up points before going on to immigration bans and the like.
So basically, one of the biggest differences is going to be that for your E-2, you're just getting residence in the United States, and for your EB-5, you're getting permanent residence here in the U.S. So for the E-2, you can continue to renew that over and over and over again. But for your EB-5, once you are a permanent resident here of the United States and you've had those conditions removed, that is good indefinitely. One other thing that we should probably touch on a little bit is, we talked about the timeline, about, 3 months, maybe a little bit less versus, about 2 years. But for the EB-5 timeline, are there some countries that have backlogs in which it would take them longer to process than 2 years?
Yes, there are. Currently, the backlogged countries are China, Vietnam, and India. Those 3 countries have different sort of lengths in terms of their backlogs, with China being the longest, perhaps 10 or more years. It depends on who you're talking to. Some may say it's shrinking, and others may say it's staying strong at 10 years. I think we're going to get an update from the Department of State later this month, which is always very informative and helpful when speaking with clients and potential clients about their process. Vietnam, I think estimates have ranged anywhere from 3 to 7 years, which is quite a range. But again, we're going to get an update on that estimate. And India has really seen great progress over the last handful of months, to where we know the priority date is in January of 2020. So we're almost current. And we expect India to be current under the EB-5 category, I believe, by August or September of this year. That being said, it does, if a country is backlogged, if a foreign national is from a backlogged country, it does slow down part of the immigration process. It could slow down, depending on the new policy, it could slow down when the I-526 petition is approved, but it will certainly slow down the time frame between getting the I-526 petition approved and actually getting that conditional green card in hand. You need to wait for your appointment at the U.S. consulate, or to apply to adjust status to green card based on becoming current, meaning getting through that backlog. So a really good strategy is, if you want to be in the U.S. Faster and wait out that backlog, is to come in as an E-2 visa holder. And we know that some of those backlogged countries don't qualify for E-2. However, you could acquire a second passport, then qualify for E-2, come into the U.S. while waiting to go through the backlog, and then adjust status when your time comes under the EB-5 program.
And so we also have options for other citizenships too as well. So don't be deterred, if you are from one of those countries that is not a treaty national country. We can still get another passport for you that then would qualify and would assist you then in being able to apply for that E-2 and get that faster timeline.
Yes, that's very helpful. And let's get to the temporary immigration ban.
So before you do that, let me just end the poll here.
Okay.
And so we'll let you know kind of what countries everybody is interested in. So it looks like people are most interested in Mexico with 37%, followed by India with 22%. And then we've got some pretty strong interest here in Iran, Nigeria, and China as well.
Yeah, that's a great variety. This poll really speaks to the times. I am constantly in touch with Mexican nationals interested in the U.S. right now. Before COVID-19, being based in Houston, I was traveling to Mexico just about every other month. But due to political and COVID-19 situations, there's been great interest coming from Mexico. India as well. I'm in constant contact with Indian nationals, whether they're in the U.S. or in the Gulf states or in India, and they have their various reasons. why they're looking to the U.S. too. I think based on today's global pandemic and other reasons, whether it be education and other similar reasons. So this is a really telling poll. I think I can talk about some of these countries in more specificity, but if we're going to talk about specific country bans, then we'll really have to more focus on Nigeria and Iran. But the overall immigration ban applies to everybody, all countries. That was introduced in April for a 60-day suspension of immigrants to the U.S. Now, it does cover a number of immigrant visa types, and I emphasize immigrant visa types. It does not include non-immigrant visas. So let's go back to that chart in our heads and say, what are those non-immigrant visas? Well, that's the E-2 visa. Those are some of our student visas and other non-immigrant visa options. However, then we think about, well, I want to become a lawful permanent resident. What if I want to qualify based on making an investment through EB-5? That's an immigrant visa. That's an immigrant process to become a green card holder. Well, the good thing is, under this 60-day immigration ban, we know that the EB-5 category is exempted. So I have clients with approved I-526 petitions who are able to move forward with setting up their interviews, their appointments at U.S. consulates, at least through the National Visa Center. I'll get to how COVID-19 may be affecting it, but they are able to do this even with the temporary immigration ban in place. Now, the country-specific travel bans, we've seen sort of a rolling out of various countries, and these travel bans affect different countries in different ways. I've got a list of those countries and kind of when the most recent iteration of these bans have been put into place for these various countries. The first thing I want to point out, and this includes, this also speaks to the 60-day travel ban or immigration ban that was introduced in April for all countries. I-526 petitions are still being processed during the 60-day immigration ban and for these country-specific travel bans. For instance, I just had a Nigerian national's I-526 petition approved last week. So that by USCIS. So that goes to show, even with this temporary country-specific ban in place, the I-526 petition can still be approved. Now, there are exemptions and waivers. There are specific non-immigrant visa categories for some of these countries to be able to get to the U.S., while other of these countries on the list, like Nigeria, non-immigrant visas are still fine. So if an individual is here in the U.S. or enters the U.S. using a non-immigrant visa and an I-526 petition is approved, we can still move forward with filing for adjustment of status to become a green card holder right here in the United States. Other ways that people have been able to navigate some of these bans that are in place are dual passport holders. We've been able to move forward with the EB-5 process, for example, for a citizen of one of these countries, but that individual happens to have another passport as well. And we'll be processing the issuance of the immigrant visa through that second passport. That doesn't mean they're not charged as their home country. They are going through the immigration process under their country of birth, but they happen to have another passport, and we're making arrangements for that immigrant stamp to be issued through that second passport. If we want to speak to Nigerian nationals a little bit further, that is sort of very much a temporary suspension, and we may see revisions to that later this year. But again, there are a variety of ways to keep going through the process, whether it be a non-immigrant visa to come to the U.S. and adjust status based on the I-526 petition getting approved. If we want to focus on someone like an individual from somewhere like Iran, we know that students can still move forward with student visas. And if the I-526 petition is approved, and I emphasize we want to handle this with care, student visas have a very clear-cut non-immigrant intent, meaning you enter the U.S. without intentions of immigrating to the U.S. But based on timing and I think proper advice, you can navigate immigration through EB-5 as a student in the U.S., including for Iranian nationals. In general, there is a way to qualify for a waiver if your EB-5 process is approved. That waiver process is a case-by-case look by the U.S. consular officer and the visa office, looking at undue hardship being put on that individual. Also, whether it's in the national interest for that individual to come to the U.S. National interest, they look to, does that individual have a relative in the U.S. or a business interest in the U.S. that needs that individual to come over? And last but not least, it looks at national security, and that's where it incorporates the visa office and looking at background checks and other national interest databases to make sure that that individual is okay to come to the U.S. All that being said, these are the countries that are looked at right now as having bans, but there can be exemptions, waivers, other visa options that we can explore to help move forward in the immigration process.
So I've had a lot of success. I've successfully assisted, hundreds of investors of coming here to the United States. And that includes, since 2017, investors from Iran and Syria, none from Nigeria yet, because that one's actually fairly new. We just got that one in place just not too recently. But we've had a lot of success with these waivers and being able to still get people into the United States. Or if you don't want to go through the waiver process, because that can also add some time on too as well for your processing, because they're going to take a little bit of a closer look at your case, maybe put you into administrative processing. There's also that option too to get that second passport too as well. And so, when we do that, we see the process go a little bit faster for some of these folks. So there's a lot of good options for people from these countries. The other thing that I get asked a lot is, is the U.S., maybe not so friendly towards some of these countries because they're on this ban list. I would say that, really, the Department of Homeland Security and the Secretary of Homeland Security, they've developed these criteria really to take a look at, the identity management practices of that country. And so it may just very well be that, in addition to, maybe national security or public safety things, that it could just be identity management processes too as well that are impacting that particular country. I know a lot of these countries are trying very hard. I know Nigeria is one of those to work with the United States to get up to compliance and to be able to, safely identify their folks and to be able to, safeguard their passports and what they do when passports are lost and stolen. And so, there have been countries that have actually successfully gotten themselves off of these lists too as well. I know Chad is one of those countries. So it's possible to also get your country off of that list. And there's a lot of countries that are very actively working to get off of that list. And the U.S. government is working very closely with them to get those countries off that list, because they would like to see none of these countries on this list. And as soon as they get their information practices, in line with the rest of the world, then they can be removed from this list, pretty easily.
Absolutely. Very good point. Before we wrap up, let's touch on COVID-19 issues. This is pretty straightforward, but I wanted to, we took this snippet from the Department of State website to demonstrate sort of the timeline of events or ramping up of different closures of visa services across the world, and what's gone on since, let's say, March 20th, when that announcement was made that many U.S. embassies and consulates would be closing. We've seen a focus on the need for food industry workers and medical professionals to continue to be able to enter the U.S. We've also seen these proclamations of temporary suspension of travel of immigrants. In addition to that, we've seen sort of an unrolling of a rolling out of 14-day quarantine periods from individuals from specific countries or who have been in specific countries like China, Iran, Schengen area, UK, Ireland, and Brazil. I have been very busy over the last 2.5 months or so working with individuals who are either stuck in the US, they were maybe here as visitors or students, and now are looking for ways to stay longer, perhaps even immigrate, perhaps change to an E-2 status based on making an investment in a business, perhaps lay out a long-term EB-5 immigration plan to become lawful permanent residents and have in the US. Otherwise, for those who are outside the United States, we know that June will probably see some opening up of U.S. embassies and consulates. USCIS here in the United States, the immigration agency, is starting to accept in-person interviews, face-to-face meetings as soon as tomorrow. So we know that they're opening up, and I think that we'll see U.S. consulates and embassies follow suit over the next month or so. Right now, essential services, emergency workers, emergency visa types, medical professionals are starting to get and have been getting immigrant visa interviews. I just spoke with a client yesterday who was successfully able to successfully obtain an interview in Shanghai. I had another client whose interview was postponed in Ho Chi Minh City, switching to Mexico. Right now, travel between Mexico and the U.S. is limited due to COVID-19. They are looking for essential workers or essential travel in terms of allowing who can come back and forth for the time being. And I do know that some E-2 visa holders have been able to qualify under that essential travel because they own and operate businesses in the United States. Now, tourism, that is not really what they're looking for in terms of travel right now. But as COVID-19 issues sort of evolve over the summer, we'll see how that changes.
And one of the big things we've been seeing through the Trump administration and through government is that, they're really supportive of the E-2 and the EB-5 programs, because with COVID-19, they really want to see more investment into the United States to help activate the economy. And so that's just the type of immigration that they're looking to bring here to the United States to really help the economy. As these consulates do start to open back up, I think we're going to see, those types of categories really prioritized as the U.S. government really wants to get those investments in. And so as Christian had brought up earlier too as well, with the E-2 visa, you don't have to wait to start the process until you're actually, have a consulate that's open. You can actually start the process right now, and you can get your business and you can get everything all in line so that when the consulates do open up in the next month or 2 months, then you're all ready to go. Because it is going to take some time as well for you to prepare all the documentation that you're going to need to submit into the consulate too as well. So it never hurts to just be prepared and to have everything ready so that, the day that the consulates do open up, you can submit your package and be ready to go. On the EB-5 side, USCIS, while they did suspend their in-person services, all of their non-in-person services were still all available. So, the filing of I-526 petitions, the filing of I-829 petitions, and then the adjudication of those two as well. In the past couple of weeks, I've gotten a number of adjudications on I-526 and I-829 petitions. So they are still continuing to process all of those cases. In addition to that, I think USCIS has actually been very friendly with us too as well. They're allowing for things like electronic signatures. So you don't have to worry about mailing things, because I know that some of the mail is slow in some of these countries right now. Things like DS-260s I've actually seen, which is where you actually get your appointment for your interview at a consulate abroad, and they get you ready for that process. I've actually seen that process speed up, in fact, during this, just because of the fact that they're not able to do some of the other work that they normally would be doing. Even though, interviews are not available right now, some of the other processes are still available. They're also giving people more time to respond back on any requests for evidence. There's a lot of favorable things that are going on there too, as well, with USCIS and the Department of State.
Yes, and we've seen people take advantage of all of those types of opportunities right now. I will say the work from home setting seems to have suited USCIS and the government agencies dealing with immigration well. We have seen some picking up of adjudication of cases. Processing seems to be a little smoother over the last few months. And then, as you mentioned, they are giving more time if needed to respond to information that the government may ask for. And they are offering even options for individuals who are in the U.S. that have never been offered before to stay a little bit longer while evaluating how they may determine to stay or to plan their future through something called satisfactory departure. So anyway, it has been quite interesting to see how USCIS and Immigration Agency has adjusted due to COVID-19.
Well, so do we have any questions from the audience? Is there anything that we can answer for you about, backlogs or country-specific bans or what's going on and what we're seeing out there in some of these specific countries, or any other questions that might be sort of on the top of your mind as we go through some of these topics? Okay, so we've got a question. What about South Africa?
Well, South Africa is not backlogged under EB-5. South Africa, I don't always have these memorized, but I do not believe it has the E-2 treaty.
So no, South Africa does not have an E-2 treaty.
And so under that scenario, you'd be looking at the second passport scenario option to qualify for E-2. But for EB-5 purposes, you'd be looking at a normal timeline without having to go through any kind of backlog. You're not overusing the EB-5 quota.
Yeah, so if you have $900,000 to invest, you can certainly become a permanent resident in maybe about 2 years' time. And if you are, looking for something that's a little bit less expensive, you can certainly apply for another option like Grenada at about $200,000, and then add on to that with an E-2 visa. Now, there's not a specific amount for the E-2 visa, but the E-2 visa is available for somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 typically for a business, but it does depend on what kind of business that is. Let's see, what other questions do we have here? Oh, we're getting a lot of questions now. Oh boy. Okay, so can the E-2 visa have benefits for U.S. citizens?
Well, it can have benefits in the sense that you can work and get paid in the U.S. From the E-2 associated or by the E-2 associated company. Your children can go to school in the United States as E-2 dependents. Your spouse can qualify and can apply for an employment authorization document to work in the United States wherever he or she chooses. So there are clear benefits to becoming an E-2 visa holder. Now, in terms of being a lawful permanent resident, you're not a lawful permanent resident as an E-2 visa holder. And so you're not going to qualify, for instance, as going to school. You'd still be a foreign national or foreign international student under E2, and other kinds of things that the green card holders qualify or U.S. citizens qualify for as compared to an E2 visa holder.
Let's see what else we've got here. We have a question about the immigration-specific ban and Venezuela.
Venezuela, that's kind of one of the more nuanced bans. Certain government officials and their family members are being looked at with high scrutiny and are experiencing bans. Venezuelans in the U.S. Can still go through an immigration process under USCIS, but I would certainly advise you to look to whatever your connections are to the specifics of that ban to understand how it's affecting you.
I have another question here. Which options do you have for the E2 visa? So right now we've got some really great franchise options for the E2 visa. We've got one called Teriyaki Madness, which is located all across the United States. It's a very quickly growing franchise in that it's fast casual. Also, one of the things that we see with fast casual too as well is when there are periods of recession, fast casual, typically tend to do a little bit better. In addition to that, it's also a franchise as well. So, consular officers tend to like franchises a little bit better just because it's kind of a pre-baked solution. So if you don't already have an existing business and you want to start something that's a new business, this way, you can build off of the, 17-year track record of Teriyaki Madness. You can see kind of what the revenues are for other stores, and you can kind of use that as a basis for your petition. There's a lot of information that's in the disclosure documents for that franchise that are really helpful in putting all of that together. And then for Teriyaki Madness, they also have a really great group with the franchisor that we work with too as well, to help you select the location and to get the project up and running too as well. And then they'll also handle a lot of the management, the day-to-day management for you too as well. So you can kind of focus on the project from more of an ownership level too as well. Let's see, we've got a question about Lebanese.
All right. So Lebanon does not have
on the list.
No, does not have an E2 treaty. So you would need to look into the second passport option that for a passport that does qualify as E2. But under EB-5, it is not backlogged. Lebanese nationals can qualify under EB-5 and can go through the normal timelines of, let's say, 12 to 24 months and wind up as a lawful permanent resident. So as we've sort of discussed, if you're interested in being in the U.S. sooner rather than later, perhaps looking into ways to qualify for the E2 and the second passport would benefit you. And at the same time, you'd like that long-term plan of staying in the U.S., living and working wherever you'd like in the U.S., you can do so under the normal timelines of the EB-5 program.
Ooh, here's another good one. Taxes. So obviously neither one of us is a tax expert. We've got an immigration attorney here and then someone who specializes on the business side as well of what kind of businesses you need to put together to qualify for these immigration benefits. But, just in general, if you become a permanent resident of a country, then you're likely going to be subject to the tax of that country. As an E2 investor, there is a possibility that you may not be a tax resident depending on how much time you're spending in the United States. So, I highly recommend that you consult with your tax advisor on those particular issues. Or we also have another webinar that's coming up in a few days about taxation too as well. I believe those are in Spanish and Portuguese. But we could also have a US language engagement too as well for that. But yes, always consult a tax advisor. But in general, if you're going to be an EB-5 investor, you're definitely subject to US tax. If you're going to be an E2 investor, you may or may not be subject to US tax depending on how much time you're spending in the US and a variety of other factors. Okay, let's see. We have a question about EAD. Is EAD currently being extended under COVID-19?
Well, I just had an EAD approved yesterday. That was not an extension. That was somebody's first EAD. Extensions shouldn't be treated differently. What we are seeing is if they're requiring a biometrics appointment, those have been suspended for the time being. And so once these in-person meetings open up starting tomorrow, they will start scheduling those biometrics appointments for various EAD AP cards, green cards, etc., which will allow for that card to actually be produced. We just had a client who did get their EAD card produced without having to go through the biometrics appointment, and that's because USCIS used prior biometrics information that they had on that individual. So that was quite convenient.
Let's see, we have, do you help people select a business for US E-2 visas? The answer is yes, that's exactly what we do. So we assist investors with prepackaged solutions for E-2 and EB-5 visas. So if you're interested in either one of those things and you would maybe like some assistance in starting up those businesses here in the United States, we've got prepackaged solutions that are already ready. So, we specialize in making sure that we take care of all the details for you so you can just make your investment and focus on living your life here in the United States. Okay, so we've got a question about Nigeria. Can people from Nigeria qualify for E-2 and EB-5?
All right, so we know that Nigeria is not on the E-2 treaty list, but doesn't mean that you cannot go and acquire another passport that is on the E-2 list. You could do that if you would like to pursue an E-2 visa option. We also know that even with the temporary country ban with Nigeria, non-immigrant visas can still be obtained or can still be traveled on to the U.S. So E-2 visa is a non-immigrant visa. So if you pursue that route, there is a way that you can come to the United States, even under today's climate. EB-5 is an exception to the 60-day immigration ban, but immigrant visas are not supposed to be issued to Nigerians right now unless we can say, well, it's a dual passport holder, or you qualify for one of the exceptions. There are exceptions that we've talked about earlier, but we can get into also if you have maybe family members in the U.S. or there's some kind of essential need to have you here. We can make an argument for them to go ahead and issue the immigrant visa at the consulate. That being said, your I-526 petition can go forward. It can be approved to move your EB-5 process to the next stage. And as Jennifer explained earlier, these are temporary. Countries are working to get off these bans lists and meet the data exchange standards that they need to be at. And I'm certain Nigeria is working on doing that. And trying to, I believe the deadline to reconsider is in October. So I think we'll see, I would expect we'd see some changes by then.
Yeah, I think Nigeria is one that they actually cited too as one of the countries that was working the hardest to get themselves off the list. So they're very cooperative with the US government and they are actively working to get themselves off of that list.
Yeah, and as a result, I mean, I'm in constant contact with potential clients from Nigeria who are really worried about things that are happening with COVID-19 there and remain very interested in moving to the US. Now is a fine time to start that process, because by the time you can take advantage of the visa, of the immigrant visa, I think that there's a good chance we see changes to the temporary ban.
Well, I think that's a great segue to the end here. I know we still have a number of questions that we weren't able to answer, but you're also welcome to send those questions directly to us too as well. You'll be getting an email after the webinar presentation, and you're happy to send us any questions that you might have. or also to start working with an immigration attorney like Christian himself, and he can kind of help answer some more case-specific questions for you too, and kind of help walk you through the entire process from start to finish. So I just wanted to thank you, Christian, for being on with us today. You've had a lot of really good answers for us on how to navigate some of these very complex things. These are not very easy things by any means, but Christian does a great job of navigating through all of these things and making them seem easy for his clients. So certainly do feel free to reach out to him or myself with any questions that you might have after the broadcast too as well.
Yeah, and thanks so much to you and your team for having me be a part of these webinars that you guys are putting on. These have been great, and I'm so pleased to contribute. Thanks again.
And thanks everyone for attending.